Well, good afternoon. A month ago, the American people voted for a new direction in Washington. It was their will that the current business as usual approach needs to stop. It's obvious why. You read the paper today, America set a new record last month. The largest deficit, $248 billion. We're 20 days before the new members are being sworn in. We've got two members leading appropriations in the Senate who will no longer be here or be able to be held accountable to the constituents. We've got an omni bill that takes 12 appropriation bills and puts them all together and adds the baseline of somewhere about $100 billion. We're Christmas season. A talk of the majority right now who wants to put a small continuing resolution to bump all the members up 2 days before Christmas, to try to vote on a package they cannot read, written by two individuals who will not be here, on spending for the entire government. The Democrats have been in power. They've had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They did not do their work, but they should not jam us now. They should not jam the American public. We cannot afford it. We should not move a short-term CR. We should move one further into the new year. Allow the American people what they said a month ago to change Washington as we know it today. We can't afford to continue to spend the way the Democrats have. The future generation cannot afford it as well. With that, let me turn it over to our whip and soon-to-be Majority Leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Kevin. We need to change the way Washington does business. In fact, we ran on an agenda of changing the way Washington does business. And right after that election, where the American people said that they want a check and a balance on the Biden administration, where they want to change leadership in the House, we see Washington trying to do that same business one last time right before Christmas by bringing this omnibus appropriations bill that nobody's seen. As Kevin pointed out, just a handful of people at most are writing it right now. It's still not even available for anyone to read, and yet they want the ability to go and bring that on the eve of Christmas because it's a sign that Congress failed to do its job. The Democrat House, the Democrat Senate, the Democrat White House had all year to get funding taken care of by September 30th. And of course, they blew through that deadline and asked for another few months. Right before the election, they surely didn't want to be accountable for what they knew they were going to do, so they kicked the can again till after the election. And in fact, we whipped against that bill because we knew that was their intention, to bring a big, massive spending bill after the election is over because they didn't want the American people to see all of the money that they were going to be spending on pet projects, on things that have nothing to do with getting our economy back on track, at focusing on the problems that are crushing hardworking families all across America. And that's why we oppose this process. We have to make Congress be more accountable. We have to make Congress do its job on time again. This is not the way to do business. We need to scrutinize the billions and trillions of dollars. Just look at Joe Biden's 2 years. He's spent about $10 trillion on things like paying people not to work, giving out checks to prisoners, the Boston bomber. People are fed up with all the waste that's going on, and then they don't have the ability to even see a bill before it's brought to the House floor. This has to change. We're going to change it, but they shouldn't do this on their last gasp right out the door before Christmas. And so that's why we're opposing this approach. Now I want to bring up our conference chair, Elise Stefanik.
Thank you, Steve. The holiday season is in full swing, and Americans are still paying more for just about everything due to Biden inflation. The skyrocketing price of goods, travel, and services will make this the most expensive Christmas in history. And yet here we are with Democrats controlling government in the final hours trying to keep the lights on in one-party rule. They have failed to do their most basic duty to govern. And make no mistake about this process, Democrats cut House Republicans out of these negotiations since day one. The lame duck Democrats spent the last 2 years running up the tab on the backs of hardworking American families. And the American people have just spoken and rejected this radical agenda by electing a new House Republican majority. As the clock runs out on Democrats' one-party rule in Washington, House Republicans will hold the line. We will oppose Democrats' spending wish list that pushes trillions of taxpayer dollars to fund their far-left radical agenda. In just 20 days, House Republicans will have the gavel and end the left's reckless spending, fueling this historic and painful inflation crisis. On day one in the majority, we will start reining in the Biden administration and deliver on our commitment to America. And I'm honored to turn it over to our Appropriations Ranking Member, Kay Granger.
Over the past 2 years, Democrats spent more than $3 trillion outside of normal process. $3 trillion is double the amount of the annual appropriations bills. This additional funding was not to fund our nation's defense. It was for non-defense programs. That's why I'm going to oppose an omnibus appropriations bill if it provides other than significant increase for non-defense programs. A better plan is to pass a continuing resolution into the next year. House Republicans will work toward a spending agreement that cuts wasteful spending, reduces inflation, and prioritizes border security and national defense. We have to stop this out-of-control spending. I'm sorry, I don't know who's next.
Sure, we will now turn it over to our Budget Ranking Member, Jason Smith.
It's been 75 days. 75 days since the Democrats were supposed to pass funding for our government, just to keep the lights on. And we are less than 2 weeks away from Christmas, and they're trying to jam through a huge spending bill. Why is that? Because they have spent the last 2 years under one-party Democrat rule in Washington, the White House, the House, and the Senate, spending excess money in their reconciliation packages. In fact, in the first 20 months of President Joe Biden, he has added more than $10 trillion in new spending. That is a record for any president in his first 20 months in the history of the United States. It's also the largest debt increase by any president in his first 20 months in the history of the United States. Last year, they passed an appropriations bill that increased spending 7%. This year, they're trying to pass a huge spending bill that increases it another 9%. If you look at the 10 years before, when we had budget caps from 2011 to 2021, it was an average increase of 2% every year. This spending does not only affect hardworking men and women across this country with the huge inflation tax. In fact, every American has lost roughly 2 months of their salary over the last 2 years because of the Democrats' reckless spending. But we also have a fiscal crisis within our own government. Just this week, Treasury announced that just the first 2 months of this fiscal year cost the United States government an additional $103 billion just to pay interest on the debt, which is an 87% increase than what it was a year ago. We are less than an hour from the Federal Reserve once again raising interest rates. This will be the 7th time since March. When Joe Biden took the oath of office, the Congressional Budget Office projected there would not be an increase to interest rates until the year 2024. But just this year alone, we've seen the highest spike in increases of interest rates in 40 years and the most combined in the last 15. The last thing we need is a reckless government spending bill that does not have the input of what the voters chose, and that's a Republican House of Representatives.
You want to introduce Mr. Turner?
I'm happy to introduce the gentleman from Ohio, the future chairman of the Intel Committee, Mike Turner.
Thank you, Jason. Every month, when American families sit down to pay their bills, they feel the crushing weight of inflation and the out-of-control spending from Washington that is driving that inflation. They know every month that as they look to the future of their family, that their future economic security is at threat, is at risk as a result of the out-of-control spending. This omnibus represents continued out-of-control spending in Washington. They also know every time they turn on their television and continue to see people pour over our border, that the administration's failure to secure our border is a national security risk. With fentanyl, human smuggling, the cartels, the risk to our nation as a result of the things that are not funded in this bill also put us at risk. So I will oppose this bill, and I would encourage others also, because of what it does to American families and their economic security, but also what it fails to do to protect our national security. Thank you. Our leader, Kevin McCarthy.
Thank you, sir. As you heard, we set new records last month. One of the main reasons why, as Jason Smith talked about, interest. More than $100 billion increase just in the interest on our debt. Why did we have to raise rates? Why is the interest going up? Inflation. How did we get inflation? The runaway spending from the Democrats. Did they learn nothing in the last month election? Did they learn nothing with the American public being harmed? And to walk through, to pass the largest bill that we passed throughout the year, in the last days before Christmas, where they won't even tell you what the baseline is now, that two people who will not be here are held accountable to their constituents, that they're going to determine this? We think it's wrong. We think it's wrong to do a short continuing resolution. Let's let the American people have the say. Let's do our spending bill in the next quarter. Yes, sir.
If you become speaker, how will you handle appropriations? Will you, if you pass all 12 bills, the Senate passes you a package, will you refuse to take that up?
Yes, if the Senate does not do their work, they can't sit back and think they're going to jam us into some omnibus.
So you're committing that you'll only pass individual appropriations?
We'll pass individual bills over to the Senate, and just like this, the House did it to the Senate, and the Senate didn't do their work, and now they think the Senate can sit there and craft all these bills together. No, the constituents should have a say in the process. The Senate should have to do their work. The Democrats control all this. They control the House, the Senate. They didn't do their job. And now they want to jam the American public in exactly what they want to do. They want to raise the spending, bring more inflation, create more wokeism in the legislation they want to pass through it, and not even give members an opportunity to read it or see it. Yes, sir.
If you do the appropriations bill in January, February, how much would you cut domestic spending? Do you have an estimate on that, and would you fund Ukraine needs?
I would sit down like anything else we do, like every single household. We'd take how much money we're able to afford, and we'd proportion it out and let all the members have that debate in an open process. Yes.
Why has it been so hard for you to get 218 votes to become speaker when you have President Trump apparently lobbying on your behalf? You've been meeting with members of the Freedom Caucus, but the votes just aren't there. Why has it been so hard for you?
Have you spent any time with my conference? But I mean, you know what's amazing to me? Here we are with one of the biggest things going on the spending, and I can always count on you for the most inappropriate question. But next question, yes.
Trying to become speaker.
Wondering about the, so if you were able to extend the CR into early next year, what gives you the confidence that you would be able to negotiate a deal when there is a large faction of your party that's even challenging your speakership?
Well, like anything you walk through, you're going to have debate. The one thing I know is the American public is now going to have somebody in the discussions. The American public will now have somebody in and say, the answer isn't to spend more money. The answer is to eliminate the waste and the wokeism. The answer is to prioritize what the American public wants. They'd also look at what's in here to actually secure the border and stop the fentanyl coming for killing our children. What's in this legislation that actually lowers the price of gasoline and makes America energy independent? What in here assures that American men and women have the resources they need when it comes to the military? What in here makes sure that whatever we invest in is what America needs going forward? But more importantly, what does this bill do to make sure we move towards balancing our budget? I think those are the priorities. Yes, Jeff?
Mr. Leader, so this is not quite the same question here, but if you, let's say you had a 30, 40 seat majority, disavow us from the idea that if you had a 30, 40 seat majority, that this is not political, that you would say, okay, let's figure out a way to fund the government, let's not worry about the votes for speaker, that this is not political here in an effort to court those conservative votes so you can become speaker on January 3rd, if this was not an issue.
What argument did I propose that have anything to do with the speaker? I propose that you have 2 senators who are gone. You just had an election where we changed the course, where the House is now going to be controlled by Republicans. You have Democrats who controlled all and didn't do their job are now going to try to jam us right before Christmas. A bill that funds the entire government, that we don't have any input in and others. It wouldn't have anything to do with being speaker. It has to do with the American public and what the future of America is going to be when it comes to fiscal resources. So it doesn't matter whether we have a 30-seat majority or a 5-seat majority. We get the same size gavel, but we're going to use it in the manner that the American public wants us to. Yes.
Mr. Leader, the January 6th committee is going to release their final report next week. First of all, do you and your conference plan any sort of rebuttal to it? Do you have plans after you take the majority to look into the work of the January 6th committee? I know you've already sent Chairman Thompson a letter to that, but if you could provide any specifics to that. And then
Yes.
finally, are you concerned that you or any of your colleagues may be referred for criminal contempt for ignoring their subpoena?
I'll answer your last question first. No, not at all. We did nothing wrong. Will we release? Yes, for the information we have, and we'd want to get to the bottom. We'd want to not to play politics like the Democrats pick and choose, so be interesting to see. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, with the delays in steering for contested races, if you've made any decisions on when those decisions are going to be made on a date?
Today we'll have a
Concern is
meeting when it
on
comes to the House
delaying
rules,
your
and we'll be
plans.
taking steering up as we move forward. Yes.
Earlier, you mentioned that you want to bring up appropriations bills and have an open debate about them. Will you commit to next year, if you are speaker, bringing up all spending bills under an open rule? in the
No,
House?
but I'll bring up all bills in committee open, so yes.
Are you considering changing the rule for the motion to vacate, and how would that affect things like the appropriations process or stability going ahead? Is that something you would consider, opening that up?
You know, in conference, our House rules and our conference rules changed motion to vacate, that 50% of the conference can bring it up and move it that way. Yes.
Do you believe that Republicans have a better chance of voting a bill for reform during this Congress, or is it something that you would rather tackle in the next Congress?
Not to be facetious, but I think we'd be much stronger in the majority than sitting in the minority. Yes.
Donald Trump has endorsed you for Speaker. Do you plan to endorse him for President above all other candidates?
We haven't talked about that yet, but one thing I do know, if we had President Trump in, we wouldn't have inflation. We wouldn't have a border that's run away. We wouldn't have gas prices as high as it is, and we probably would have greater stability in the world. We wouldn't have China taking over others. Yes.
With Democrats in control of the Senate, what can Republicans do to fulfill their promise of blocking the forthcoming IRS funding?
Well, we'd first move a bill that repeals the 87,000 IRS agents. I'd like to see the Democrats who want to defend that. I don't think the American public like that. But it also goes to the question we're talking about today. We'd have a stronger hand in doing that for the American public in an appropriation process where we're in the majority. It's just one of the other factors that we can deal with. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Leader, you mentioned earlier about giving the American people a voice in these negotiations. Are you saying Republicans in the House were cut out of these negotiations, or
Yes.
you
But,
were?
but I'm
you
saying
weren't
it's more
invited
than
to the
just,
table?
I'm saying it's more than just the Republicans in the House. Can you tell me what the baseline they agreed to?
No, I'm asking you.
No, I know, but I'm asking you a question as a reporter. You're an American.
I understand what you're saying, and you're saying that it's not public and people don't understand.
I'm just trying to understand if Republicans were able to be in the room or if they were being cut out of this negotiation.
Well, let me be very clear. If you, as a reporter that covers the House of Representatives, is about to pass trillions of dollars, and you don't even know what the baseline is yet, and they want to vote on it next week, I don't think it's just us being cut out. I think the American public's being cut out. And if two people who are deciding it aren't going to be held up to the voters, do you feel good about that as an American, not about as a reporter? I don't think anybody in America would feel good about it. Why, if we're going to make a decision on funding government when we have more than a $31 trillion debt, when we spent more than $100 billion in this new fiscal year just on interest alone, we have runaway inflation we haven't seen in 40 years based upon the mismanagement and spending of the Democrats, why would you feel comfortable moving forward that way? I don't think this is a partisan issue. I think this is about saving the country. Thank you all.